approaches to preventing this condition or helping it is, you could call it several different things, but cognitive training or cognitive exercise, stimulating exercise, so forth and so on. So that's another body of observational evidence primarily, in which it has been shown that people who engage in stimulating activities, people who have higher level, more cognitively demanding professional careers, people who have more education, people who do crossword puzzles and maintain an active intellectual life in retirement and so forth, have a lower incidence of dementia. And that's pretty clearly the case. The problem with that is that you never know whether the reason they have the lower incidence of dementia is because they're different kinds of people, i.e. the kinds of people who do more schooling, the kinds of people who pursue higher level professional careers, the kind of people who do Sudoku and crossword puzzles and so forth and so on. So it's an issue of confounding in epidemiological terms, and the only way around it is to do randomized controlled trials. And those trials have been done. So let me tell you the result. The trials show that with memory training and cognitive training, you can actually improve cognition in older people who are in this age range where they're at risk. But the effect is not sustained. So once the intervention is over and people go back about their regular activities, they're right back where they started from in a few months. So what that seems to suggest is, yes, you know, you can hone the apparatus, but you're not affecting the biology of the disease. At least that's my interpretation. I'd like to be proven wrong on that, because it's obviously something that's not that difficult to do and it's not dangerous. But right now I don't think the weight of the evidence supports it.
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah.
Naproxen's pretty poisonous stuff.
It is.
A lot of these people are on aspirin. Would aspirin be a better alternative?
Could be. So one of the problems with trials is that they test what they test and they don't test anything else. Naproxen has real problems, particularly in very old people, and we found that out in the trial, and eventually we had to stop the treatment. Although I will say that the reason we had to stop the treatments was not because of the difficulty with naproxen in the trial, but because the COX-2 inhibitors had come along and created a great deal of furore and scare, and it was very difficult to maintain the treatments in the trial in that setting. Clearly, it would be if we could demonstrate proof of principle in this trial, we'd want to move on to try to find something that did the same thing that naproxen did, we would hope, that was safer. But you know, these things move in increments. The epidemiological evidence on aspirin versus non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is the aspirin evidence is mixed. Aspirin is typically taken in much lower doses, primarily for cardioprotection rather than for any kind of anti-inflammatory effect. That's something that occurs at a different dosage level altogether, and we don't know whether a higher dosage regimen of aspirin, the kind that would be used as an anti-inflammatory, would have. But I would point out this to you, that the reason we have non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is that higher doses of aspirin, which is what we used to use for treatment of inflammatory disease and arthritic conditions, the NSAIDs, for the same degree of efficacy, are clearly safer and better tolerated. So we have work to do, but and this is not meant to be the last answer for sure. But if it's real and we can show it, I think we're well ahead.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. That was really fascinating. And for me, and I work in the area of trying to get public messages across, one of the things that sometimes worries me is that the story that we've got to tell is overwhelmingly negative. And I introduced a part of that at the start, 270,000 Australians with the disease, explosion and all the rest. But to hear messages from John today was the thing that struck me was the positiveness that came through. That the more we learn about this disease, the more we'll deal with it. That we're on the verge of an explosion of knowledge about the biology. That if we put in the research and the resources to this disease as we did into heart disease, we can achieve the same measure of prevention. That biomarkers for early diagnosis may lead to better prevention, and so on. That research essential, and it will work. So I'm going to include those messages in what I say when I'm out there. John, you've devoted your life to this disease. You've devoted your life to caring for people, and you're at the forefront of that battle. And for that we thank you, and in particular we thank you for what you've shared with us this morning. John. And thank you folks for joining us, and we hope that in the future we'll have the opportunity to have breakfast together again. Thank you. And thank you to Dr. Andrew McDonald in particular, our host today, who's a very kind friend of our organisation. Have a good day, folks.